Welcome to a journey unlike any other. What you're about to hear isn't a story of imagination. It's a recounting of something real, something profound, something life-changing. This is my story of transformation, of hitting rock bottom, soaring on the wings of love and joy, and then discovering a truth so vast, so powerful, so blissful that it shattered everything I thought I knew about myself, about the world, and about existence itself. Join me as we go deep into the woods to the moment where everything changed forever. My story begins in a place of deep suffering. I grew up in a family shaped by addiction, with a father who suffered immense pain. His struggles led to depression, and in 2003, he acted on thoughts of suicide. His pain and eventual passing ignited a promise in me that his suffering, our family's suffering, and my suffering would not be in vain. I didn't realize it then, but that was a vow to find an end to suffering. Fast forward 6 years to 2009. My life felt like it was unraveling. Separation, isolation, debt, disability, and physical pain burdened me. But the worst part wasn't anything real. It was the relentless suffering created by dreaming the stories in my mind that felt unbearable. I didn't know how often I got lost in stories in the mind. You know what I mean? Where you're not really present in the room and the story experience becomes as big as life. Eventually, the thought of suicide surfaced. That jarred me awake for a moment and brought me back to my promise, to my father, to myself, that his struggle and our shared pain would not be in vain. That day I realized I'd been searching for love in all the wrong places, only to discover it within myself. You know that huge sense of relief when you find something precious that you thought was lost? That discovery marked a turning point, leading to ever-growing love, joy, freedom, and peace in my life. I share the full details of that realization and how I stopped suffering in my third podcast episode called The Voice in Your Head. Pause and consider, what would it mean to you to stop suffering thoughts in the mind? I began to live in an ever-growing, all-natural high, at times being overcome by love and joy, a love so vast, so pure, it had no outer source. I knew it was within, and sometimes I called it the beloved within. For weeks, I walked around in this newfound joy, unable to explain it, just knowing that I could have or experience it any time I looked for it, which was becoming more and more often. My circumstances hadn't changed. I still had no job, no money, but I didn't care. Love had taken a hold of me, and I fell completely in love with love itself. I began to seek more time alone with it, and I found myself indulging in higher and higher degrees of this love, which I discovered knew no limits, due to it being uncaused and unattached to anything or anyone. So it just kept growing and growing. There was nothing more I wanted. I became completely satisfied and satiated by love. When I say I fell in love with love itself, I mean I love the experience of love. We all do. You know how sunlight continues to shine even when the clouds temporarily hide it? That's what love is like. It's always there, but without even the clouds covering it. It's just waiting to be seen. It's not delusionary, imaginary, or metaphoric. Love and joy are very physical, very real. There's an energy and warmth, and when it grows, there can be tingling and shivers up and down the spine. It's not that I never knew love, it's just that I discovered it's never been caused by anything outside of itself. It is its own cause and its own reward. I kept working, doing so-called everyday mundane things. I was happy no matter what I was doing. And I had no more aversion, need, desire, or even ambition for more in life, except for one thing. And that was to know the cause and source of this love directly. I wasn't religious. I didn't believe in a higher or greater separate being sitting in judgment somewhere else, so I didn't attribute it to one. Yet I still felt separate from this, whatever it was. I longed for it, and only it, like you would a lover. I wanted total consummation with it. There was a growing sense of I wanting to disappear in it. I started to call it God because I had come to know it was far greater than only within, and I had no other word. I didn't want to just think about or believe in God, but to actually see and directly know God. For weeks, I wanted so badly to see God, this source of love, that I had been constantly looking for God in everything, everywhere I went. And, well, let's just say that many unusual things happened during that seeking, which I don't have time for now, but they'll be in my next book. It was January 2010, 9 months into living with this newfound love and joy, when something extraordinary happened in the woods. It was a crisp winter day. The ground blanketed the snow that shimmered like billions of diamonds, reflecting every color of the rainbow. I had walked these woods countless times before, but this time I went out determined to see what I had started to call God, and vowed not to come back until I did. So I took everything I needed with me to be out all day: water, food, money, even toilet paper. At first, I stopped many times along the way, my joy growing with every moment of appreciation, and everything could be enjoyed. My energy was elevated, highly charged, and I knew I was smiling with every step. You know the feeling of being completely present and noticing every little thing? Beauty is everywhere, in everything, and it can be noticed when you pay attention. And I savored it all. The Trans-Canada Trail was an old train track that was so long and straight that most people, myself included in the past, would have been bored walking that slow if they didn't have someone to speak with or an audio to listen to. My God, what we miss and don't even know we miss. The distance wasn't far along this wide, straight track, but the heel-to-toe way I was walking in Kinhin on the icy snow that crumbled beneath my every step brought me to a crawl. It was okay. I had nowhere to be or go. I was here, and here for just one thing. I became completely absorbed in my senses, captivated by actual beauty, as opposed to just thinking about it. At the same time, I was directly inquiring into the nature of what I had begun calling God, yearning powerfully to find it, to see it. The air was frosty, but there was a tingly, warm sensation in my chest that grew in love with every step. My breath became deep, not from exertion, but from the sheer intensity of what was building inside me. My thoughts faded into the background, replaced by the overwhelming presence of reality. Earnestly seeking God, somehow I knew God is everywhere. Turn over a leaf, there is God. Turn over a stone, there is God. Looking intensely at a leaf, I saw a leaf. Looking intensely at a stone, I saw a stone. I don't see God, I said to myself, perplexed. But I had learned to question both my questions and assertions, because I know they are what blind us. So I wondered, well then, if I don't see God, what is what I see? A leaf, a flower? But then I wondered, because I questioned all of my assertions, what is a leaf, a flower? Well, well, it comes out of the ground. Um, But nobody knows how that happens, or what it really is, really. How does a delicate, intricate, exquisite, perfectly and precisely designed flower come to be and just hang in midair in space? Where does it come from? Nowhere? Having come from nowhere, nobody knows. Ah, it's all a mystery. But wait, me questioning my assertions again. What's a mystery? Oh, that's God. Oh, it is God. Oh, it's all God. It is God. It's already an immanently God that I am looking at and seeing. All this is it. All of it. Wait, what about me? Am I outside of the all? Impossible. But not even a weak, meek, or feeble no could escape before. The energy in my chest couldn't be contained any longer. It cracked my heart open in a supernova of love, overwhelming me, driving me to my knees in the snow. My head dropped, my entire being, both physical and mental, bowing in total surrender. Then the heart energy surged up into my head, exploded outward there and beyond. Through the tears streaming down my face, I looked up. My gaze landed on the trees, and for the first time, I truly saw them. They weren't trees. They are me. An uproarious laughter was unleashed. I fell over in the snow, laughing, crying, and giggling uncontrollably. Every cell in my body felt alive as though tickled by pure joy. You know that feeling when tickling consumes you? The ripples of electricity that leave you helpless in giddy chaos, completely at its mercy? It was an uncontrollable release. Love, joy, and truth had claimed me entirely, leaving no space for resistance. In that moment, thoughts dissolved into the sheer, playful absurdity of it all. It was a joyous surrender. Time and the mind simply vanished. There was only laughter, gasps for air, and the pure childlike abandon of being fully present in unrelenting joy. Eventually, as the waves of laughter eased, I felt steady enough to rise. Standing there, wide-eyed and in jaw-dropping awe, I looked at one tree, then another and another, seeing one by one that they were the same self that is me. Then the leaves, the rocks, and the stones. I spun around to see everything and saw nothing but me. Everything is me. Love cracked my heart open and unleashed itself. I love you! I love you! I love you! I yelled at everything. I love you! The trees, the snow, the sky, the earth, all of it is me. The boundary of me gone, and all that's left is an unshakable, undeniable belonging, and no place you don't belong, no thing not you. It returns you to the freedom of childlike purity, the innocence, the joy, and delight. You know, the unfiltered kind, completely free of being self-conscious. Love makes your whole body come alive with reverent gratitude and massive humility, because it's not only me that is this, it's everything and everyone. There is nothing and no one separate to own any of it. No one that can be lower or higher or lesser or greater than another. Love itself is so vast and boundless that it destroys the walls you've carefully constructed around your heart. It annihilates every shadow of self-doubt. Love shattered the separate ego, leaving me utterly humbled, with no trace of the me I once clung to. Your very existence is love. and so there's no need for acceptance. There's no part of you untouched, no part of you unknown, no part of you unloved. There are no parts of you at all, because all of you is love. Invulnerable, wrapped in safety, unlike anything you've ever known, immersed in the deepest peace imaginable. Love is a force of nature, fierce, unrelenting, and transformative, dissolving every illusion of separation until all that remains is love itself. Love doesn't want to just touch you. It wants to claim and reclaim you. My mouth opened, but speech had left me. I tried to say it's me, but no words came out. Time disappeared. It could have been minutes or hours that passed. I didn't care. There was nothing to do, nowhere to go. Everything is complete. After I got a grip on the uproarious laughter, for a nanosecond it was odd to be unable to speak, as usual. But then there was no need. Who would I speak to? There is no other. Duality had collapsed, and all that remains is the oneness of the same self. The veil of illusion fell, leaving me with an undeniable, yet ineffable, direct and immediate knowing of oneness. Insight after insight flowed. I am everywhere, and everything is me. This is me, and not what I thought I was. This is what I am. This is what I is. In contrast to the feeble dream self, the experience of my real self was incomparably powerful and unspeakably harder than diamond. The reality of myself is so obvious, inarguably real, and can't be missed or denied. The cosmic joke revealed itself. All the striving, the suffering, the searching, and the seeking was now seen as utterly unnecessary because it was all perfect and always had been. I just didn't know it. Everything is directly known. There's no need for thought. Yet eventually the voice in the head returned, and with it speech. I don't remember its first words, but I remember it was far away, somehow distant from me, down and to the left, faint and weak. This is it. It's over already. This is what everybody's looking for. It's here. It's now. This is it. It was an incredulous, strange moment, me wordlessly knowing, I know who I am, but who the hell are you? It's here. It's now. This is it. I recognized that voice. I knew I used to think that it was who I am. It's here. It's now. This is it. But this is me. There was no making that error now. The voice didn't answer. I just turned away from it because it wasn't a who. It's not an entity, not a person. It has no awareness and no sentient existence of its own. Looked upon, it disappears. It's really no more than a mechanism of the body-mind, a phenomenon like digestion. At most, a tool, but not the craftsman. Thought came back, gradually closer and louder, but now I knew who I am. That day marked the destruction of false identity and misidentification with the voice in the head, aka the false self, the ego. The inner laughter and the outer chuckle continued as the thought arose, I could stay here forever, quickly followed by the thought, well, it's all the same everywhere, so I can be anywhere. Eventually, the sun began to set. And with that, I remembered I had a party to co-host that night. Still laughing, I made my way back. On the drive there, I couldn't stop laughing. My friends asked what was so funny, but how could I explain? The trees are me? It sounded absurd, I know. Words couldn't capture what I see, what I am. Every time I try to speak, I just burst out laughing. After a couple weeks went by, one day I realized I never did see God. I never saw a God separate and other than me. Nope, me and God never met. And I was not disappointed. I said I was looking for the source of love, and I thought some mysterious God was that source. But no, God is love, literally. And love is God. Love is what everything is, you included. And I am that. Looking for myself. That's the cosmic joke and why so much laughter accompanies the realization. It's said that when you seek God, you find yourself. And when you seek yourself, you find God. There is no separation anywhere. Whatever you call it, whatever name you name it, does not make it a different or separate thing from you. You are the namer. You give the name, and so you give the appearance of separation to all things. This reminds me of something Ibn Arabi, an Andalusian Sufi, mystic, philosopher, and poet wrote. Nothing other than him has being. No one sees him except himself. He knows himself through himself, and he sees himself by means of himself. You are not you, but you are him, and there is no you. You see him, and you do not know you see him. I can remember how passages like this used to seem profoundly mysterious, intellectually challenging, and spiritually evocative. You know, how you feel a sense of awe at the depth and scope of this share, even if those pointers seem elusive or difficult to grasp fully. You just can't get them mentally. And that's a good thing, because there's not one spiritual seeker I've met who was happy just getting it intellectually. If you're getting it mentally, you're not seeing it directly. You're not actually getting it. The mind is in the middle and in the way. So you might have some confusion. The language could feel poetic yet abstract to you, filled with paradoxes and layers of meaning that invite deep reflection, but resist straightforward understanding. Don't reject these messages, though, because if you reject them, you accept the mind, and you keep the mind. And the good news is that you are the self, and thus you are experiencing the self and the truths that these works point to. A sign of beginning to break through is the feeling of something stirring within that you can't quite put your finger on, a sense of glimpsing the truth, even if just through the haze of the dream. This is how it starts. So be patient, persistent, keep reading, listening, and most importantly, recognizing even what appears as small and silent glimpses, so that the writings don't remain more conceptual than experiential. You may be left with a mixture of intrigue, admiration, and yearning, and that's useful because that's the flame of truth burning within you, burning off the false. Tend to this fire and keep it alive. You know, it's no wonder to me now that we love love. We've just been confused about love. We love ourselves. That's only right. It's only wrong to think that what you are is so much less than what you are. We've loved the wrong self, the separate self, the selfish self. Your true self loves everything as itself. Without separation, there can be no selfishness, unless that selfishness is the love of the self of all selves, not a special separate self. Because are you outside of and separate from the all? Are you separate from everything or inseparably dependent upon everything? You know, I wasn't looking for enlightenment. I just wanted to be happy, and I accidentally fell in love with love. I didn't even know at first what had happened. It didn't match any of the New Age descriptions of enlightenment, and I had not yet heard of self-realization. All I knew was that the suffering and the seeking was over. It took some years before I had a mental, intellectual explanation that could try to put words to it. Well, what use do I have for a mental thought when I have and am the real McCoy, as they say? For a few months afterwards, my experience of the world was pretty wonky. It's the only word I have. Everything I knew about it in the mind was being rewritten or deleted there. So for months, I remained inwardly blissful and outwardly silent, kind of stunned, like an innocent child again, just looking at everything brand new. I was in awe of things as simple as riding the bus around the corner. I heard every person speaking stories, falsehoods about themselves, others, or the world. These stories now glared at me as stories. It's not that I hadn't heard these things before, but I hadn't realized they weren't true. Since then, nothing has changed. I never so-called lost this realization or awakening. I never went through the so-called dark night of the soul that I've heard about, and I never suffered. Nothing ever changed, yet everything changed. I finally directly understood Dogen Zenji when he said, "Whenever I try to speak it, it's like something found in a dog's mouth." Now, that's not what it is, of course, but every time you try to speak it, that's what it's like, because you can't speak it. No words do it justice, all words dirty and tainted. No words which arise within it can contain it, and all words arise within it. Another of his quotes, which I was previously struck by, became clear: that the self advances and confirms the myriad things is called delusion. That the myriad things advance and confirm the self is enlightenment. So the separate self goes out, naming things, calling things things, and in so creating things, at least in appearance, using these things to confirm your reality, your existence, and their existence as the self. That's enlightenment. The first verse of the Tao Te Ching became clear. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The named is the mother of myriad things. I could say much more about each line here, but we'll save that exploration for a new private podcast coming called The True Self Show. Since that day, nearly 15 years ago, my life has been a fearless, joyful, loving, and continuous unfolding, integrating, and embodying of this truth. You don't have to realize yourself to stop suffering. You have to stop suffering to realize yourself. You see, there was a time before what I call the direct seeing, a day in the woods when I began to suffer unconsciously, but stopped it, cut it off, and never did it again. You can do this too. I've spent years helping others see it for themselves, to break free from the illusions dreamt in the mind, and to find peace that is your birthright. Because this isn't just my truth. Remember, it's the all. So it's the truth of all beings. It's your truth and reality too. If you've ever felt the pull to discover something deeper, something beyond the mind, know that it is possible. The truth is here, now, waiting for you to see it. Pause for a moment and consider, what if this feeling of love has always been with you, just waiting for you to notice? Are you ready to awaken to your true self? Join me for the Secrets of the Sages webinar, where we'll uncover the path to conscious awakening. This is your invitation to step into the limitless reality of love and joy that is already within you. Visit secretsofthesages.com now. Up next, I've started to get beautiful comments from listeners, and next time I'm going to answer this question from one of them. I recently discovered that relationships for me are all about the dopamine hit. So the question is, why do I need that, and are there less volatile ways to get it? P.S. By what light do you see the wall? With the light of the light bulb? By what light do you see the light of the light bulb? Ramana Maharshi said, the self is the only reality that exists, and it is by the light of the self that all other things are seen.